What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Actuali Podcast. I'm Chris,
I'm DJ.
and in this special episode of Meeting Making 101, we are going to talk with a good friend of the podcast, Woody O'Brien, former pro hockey player turned gold investor, and he's going to share insights that he's gained throughout his lifetime with us today. In these uncertain times, this will be priceless information for all of you out there. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Like and subscribe if you enjoy what we're doing here. And let's go ahead and bring Mr. Woody into the house. Cameras down. Hey, what's up, Mr. Woody? We're just correcting our camera issue over here. It's
terrific. Wonderful to be with you.
Yeah, it's being wonky tonight, but everyone, you should still be able to hear us. We're coming right back online. Here we are. What's up? Good to see you, brother.
Good to see you.
Yeah. Let me bring this up big for you, DJ, so you can focus on in. Good. Looks great.
Sorry, folks. We got gremlins in the machines.
Yeah, so does our government.
Yeah. Well, oh, boy.
Yeah. So Woody, welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm sure the viewers would love to hear about your experience as a former pro hockey player. And how do you feel that your professional hockey career prepared you for life?
Well, I had a kind of an odd path to playing hockey. There were very few Americans that played hockey back in the 1970s. But I was a really, really large kid. I was 6'2" when I was 16 years old. I was almost 200 pounds. By the time that I was playing AAA junior hockey in Erie, I was 6'6", 270. So I was a foot taller and 100 pounds heavier than everyone.
Big
And
boy.
I had been in a boxing program in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where I was 47-0. And
Wow.
I just kind of happened to come in at a time where every team needed a big Irish kid that knew how to put people in the dentist's office.
Heck
And
yeah, man. Awesome.
it was a wonderful experience for a couple of years, and you learn so much about life and about the importance of hard work
Mm.
and determination and perseverance. And I parlayed that into I got a job working for a big insurance company in Indiana, and literally just lucked out that I learned everything there was to learn about something called a mutual fund when almost
Mm.
nobody knew what that was, and had a long career in the Wall Street business. Did a lot of work in gold mining stocks and in owning precious metals. At one point, I was managing hedge fund portfolios that were hundreds of millions of dollars. And I would say I probably couldn't have done it without that start in hockey, because you have to be very, very disciplined to be
Mm.
a professional athlete, for sure.
Yeah, what were some of the experiences you had as a young man with coaches or whoever else inspired and gave you great advice on? And what do you think helped you forge that kind of discipline and determination?
Well, I think part of it is you get opportunities in life, and you have to recognize how lucky you are to have them.
Mm.
And I would say there were so few people in the United States who were even playing hockey at any level at all. And I just happened to be able to use my size in a way that other people couldn't. But the thing about any experience that you have in your young life, if you're lucky, it will teach you the importance of grit and perseverance,
Mm.
because these are the things you really need in adult life. Because I would say no one has an easy life. I don't even think Elon Musk has had an easy life. Donald Trump certainly hasn't had an easy life. And the ability to roll with the punches and be able to get up every single day and to, as I like to say, caveat emptor, which is always forward.
Mm.
And no matter what you do for a living, especially in the Wall Street business, it was a business of very, very few survivors.
Mm.
And I have a very distinct memory when I was a young stockbroker, sitting in a room with 200 other stockbrokers, and the speaker was saying, in 10 years, only one person in this room will still be here. And I stood up in the middle of the room and said, what are the rest of you going to be doing? Because I knew it would be me. Because determination
Oh,
gets
okay.
you a long way in life, and also patience. When you're investing, especially when you're investing in precious metals, You sometimes have to be patient for long periods of time.
Hmm.
I
Right.
bought my first ounce of gold when I was a teenager, and it was the price was about $45 an ounce of gold for an ounce of gold. There was a very, very long time that the price of gold was under $500. I remember people telling me all the time, "You'll never see $1,000 gold, and then you'll never see $2,000 gold, and then you'll never see $3,000 gold." Well, we're at 2,900.
Yep.
The price of gold keeps going up because it is a reflection of the incompetence of the U.S. government when it comes to money. It's
Mm.
the literally gold and silver and other precious metals are the safest thing that you can put your money in because it is a mirror at the competence of the U.S. government and its ability to deficit
Wow.
spend. And instead of printing money to spend it, it's literally letting the Federal Reserve print the money and then borrowing its own money back and paying interest on it. It's literally the dumbest system on earth. And I always describe it this way. Imagine if you had a machine in your basement that could print $100 bills. Anytime you needed money, you just went down to the basement and printed some bills. Well, if that was the case, how often would you borrow money? Well, the answer is never, because you would
Yep.
never borrow money that you can print. Well, in 1913, the US government gave the ability to create money to a private banking cartel called the Federal Reserve. And now, when the government needs money, it has to go to the people it gave a free license to print the money to have them print money and then lend them back what used to be their own money.
Wow.
It's a system so poorly designed. I would say even someone who's a graduate of the school for the retarded wouldn't have come up with a system as dumb as the one it is we have, because and the only constraint that existed up until August of 1970 was that you couldn't create more money unless you had 20% gold to back it up in Fort Knox and at West Point, New York. But as soon as Nixon took us off the gold standard, that governor that controlled the amount of money that was in circulation, and the day that that happened, the total supply of dollars in the world was about $800 billion. Now that number is way past 100 trillion. And at the
Wow.
time, gold was $35 an ounce. Now it's 2,900. By my math, it should be 15 to 25,000 at this point, just to reflect all the money that has been created and all that inflation that's been created.
Mm.
I remember a time when I was a very young man, you could buy a very nice house for $25,000.
Can you believe
Today,
it?
that same
Yeah.
house is a $500,000.
Yeah,
And
easy.
the only
Unreal.
thing I would say, the real trick is to keep reminding yourself that prices don't really go up. It's the value of the money that goes
That does.
down. So
Yes.
you have to
Yeah.
continually cough up more money, whether it's for a cup of coffee. I remember when I could walk into, when I was 10 years old, I had a paper route, and I would walk into a Dunkin' Donuts and I would get a cup of coffee and a donut for a 25-cent silver quarter. Well, that 25-cent silver quarter is worth about $5 today. I could still get a cup of coffee and a donut for $5. So
Yeah. Well.
it's maintained its value, but
Well,
in paper and electronic money, it's gone from 25 cents to $5.
yep.
So let me ask, would you say that then gold is a great hedge against government incompetence? Because the more incompetent the government gets, the maybe not proportionally, but the more valuable the gold becomes. Whereas, like, if you've got, so it's like a win-win scenario. If you've got gold and the government gets really competent, the value of the gold will go down, but so will the cost of everything else and everything else on top of it.
Well,
And
in theory, what you just said is true. But if this government is ever going to get competent, it's going to have to go back onto a gold standard where the value of the dollar is tied to the price of gold. And if that ever happens, it's going to be at a price way higher than $2,900. So
Mm.
if the government gets competency and solvency, that's going to make gold go up a whole lot higher to a locked in price. And then believe me, even I will be willing to hand my gold over to the Treasury in exchange to have gold-backed dollars and invest in
Mm.
something else
Mm.
like energy or real estate or land. But
Really?
over the long term, over the past decades since World War II, you're exactly correct. If you're investing in gold, you're investing in the incompetence of the federal government to restrain spending and to need to have more money printed in order to deficit spend. It's literally the safest bet that you can make an investment, that the government will wake up tomorrow and continue to risk insolvency.
Really?
So actually, you mentioned going back to like a gold-based currency. Is there any merit to the argument that there's not enough gold to do that,
Great question.
or where does that argument fail?
This is kind of a red herring idea, and the reason is there's plenty of gold, and if there was a really high official price for gold, the
We're still
um,
here.
a number of people willing to sell their gold to the government would soar. All you really need to do is have an official price high enough to cover that the dollar would be 20% backed by gold. That standard worked for a very, very long period of time. When the British pound was backed by gold, it was only a 10% backing. So if you had a price of gold in the official price in the tens of thousands of dollars, there's more than enough gold to cover 20% of the dollar's value. But again, if let's just say they announced the gold standard at $30,000 an ounce, well, if you own gold, there's no more upside once the price is locked at $30,000 an ounce. You're going to be selling your gold to the treasury and going off and investing in something else.
So
Absolutely.
basically, get in before the. So if Trump ends up being competent, and I don't know if the
Or the
spike
Trump
in
admin.
gold that we are seeing is because there's a bet on competence coming or not. But if Trump gets really competent and we go back to gold base, you kind of want to be buying 10 years ago.
Well,
Agreed.
actually, I think gold and silver are still dirt cheap. I remember when silver was $50 an ounce in 1980. And here we are
Mm.
decades past that, and we're barely over $30 per ounce. So I think
Yeah.
silver on a relative basis is much cheaper than gold. Silver is a lot harder to get your hands on at a reasonable price. There's some crazy premiums you have to pay to get it
Ah.
over the spot price. Gold is normally within 1 to 4% in order to buy just a bullion bar or a plain bullion coin.
Mhm.
But I would tell people, if you buy gold now, you're going to be very happy in 10 years. And don't forget that Trump is one of the largest individual holders of gold of anybody in America.
Is he
That
now?
I
Well,
would
just
say
his
if
toilets.
you if you if you Google his Trump Towers appointment, everything is in real 24 karat gold plating. There's probably $50 million worth of gold just in his apartment
Wow.
in the furnishings. But Donald Trump has always been a fan of gold, and I think that it would be very irresistible for Donald Trump, as wealthy as he is now from some of his other ventures in the online area and crypto area. I think it's going to be very hard for him to leave office without putting us back on a gold standard. Because the truth is,
Well,
if you want to make America great again, you have to start with the money. You can't make a great a country with weak money.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about crypto? And are there any certain cryptos that are better than others?
A crypto is an area that I will tell you I've really stayed out of, and the reason is because it's too much in its infancy.
Okay.
When I look back and I think about how I had somebody tell me when Bitcoin was under $1 not to buy a mortgage insurance for my new farm, but to put that money into crypto and I'd be able to pay off the house in 5 years. I remember thinking what a terrible idea that was, but that would have been a great idea in retrospect. I think the issue with crypto, there are a lot of legal issues in terms of when you sell crypto and you've made money, there's no 1099. So how are you going to report that on your taxes? And my beef with crypto has always been it's very easy, given the stage of federal laws for money laundering and bank secrecy, for you to be charged with money laundering by selling crypto and putting it into a bank account. The laws have not caught up to the reality yet.
Okay.
And of course, there's lots of people who are trying to get into kind of a Wild West atmosphere with crypto. I think this needs another 10 years to shake out. But the truth is, crypto has the same problem that the dollar has or the stock market has, and that is if you can't hold it in your hand, you have to ask yourself if you really own it or not. Because
Yeah.
the greatest
Yeah.
risk in any investment is the counterparty risk. It's the person who's hanging on to your money, whether it's stock in General Electric or whether it's a piece of land in Wyoming. If you can't drop it on your foot and it will break your bones in your foot, you really have to ask yourself whether it is you own it. And with
Yeah.
almost every asset that you have out there, where there is some kind of reporting, that means your government knows you own it. And that
Mhm.
means it can be seized. You can be declared a terrorist, and your bank account can be
Or,
frozen. This is the
or,
biggest advantage of precious metals: is nobody knows you have it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, speaking on the, do you really own it thing? There's a big stink of, like the streaming services and stuff where you buy like a movie and you buy a movie. It used to be get the DVD or the VHS, but now they'll take it off and you can't watch it anymore, even though you own it.
Yeah, that's
And
correct.
also non tangible, like economies, like say within video games, like there's a video game called Star Citizen, and some people are gonna be like, that game's a scam, and other people will enjoy it. But basically, you can spend real money or game money on ship models essentially, and then the
Yeah.
question is like, do you own that ship model, or what happens? And I guess what is it in us that gives value to one thing or another? Like obviously, you should be able to hold the thing and essentially be able to drop it on yourself, but how how are we making these value judgments, particularly when it's like non-physical things?
Well, I would put it to you this way: if I had the choice between having $1,000 in Bitcoin and having $1,000 worth of dry firewood
Ah, yeah,
uh,
well,
stored in my basement, I'd rather have the firewood because I don't know whether I'm going to be able to recover the economic value of that Bitcoin someday, but I know if I'm cold, I can burn that firewood.
hmm,
To me, food is money.
yeah,
Okay. An apple tree is money. Firewood is money. Shelter is money. The cattle on the farm next to my house, that's money. We have to start to think
Mm.
about money in a physical way. And the reason is once you put your money in the hands of somebody else, you have no idea what the real risk it is that you're undertaking, because you're no longer in control of it. And 1,000 people know that you have it.
Mm.
Anybody who doesn't understand this, the government, if knows your social security number, they can put that into a portal and see every dollar that you have in every bank account, every balance on every credit card, every loan it is that you have, and they can see what's in your stock market accounts and your IRAs, and they can see that in real time.
mm,
Wow, wow, wow.
So the idea that here's this thing and it's off in the world and you have absolutely no privacy for it, and it's subject to all the claims of the creditors that you have, and lots of people can see it, you really have to say to yourself, is that the way that I want to build wealth in this world? And to me, the answer is not me.
mm,
Mm.
yeah,
Mm.
I want to go with something that's certain, which is I'm going to own a lot of gold. I'm going to own a lot of silver. I'm a big fan of copper. It's so easy to accumulate copper by just hanging on to the old pennies that are 1982 and earlier. Every one of those pennies has 2.5 cents worth of copper in it. Every nickel that you hold on to uh, has 5.5 cents worth of copper in it. The price of copper is going to skyrocket as more and more people around the world get cars and refrigerators and
Mm.
plumbing in their houses. There's almost an insatiable demand for copper, and most of the easy copper in the world has been found in the next
hmm,
six decades. So I think copper could easily be $50 a pound in the
Wow.
not
mm,
too far distant future. It's
Okay.
under $5 a pound now.
yeah. So you mentioned that earlier on. You did investing in mines, like
Yes.
precious metal mines. Like, what about copper mines? Or do you think there's an option for that, or new copper production technology or reclamation technology? Is it worth looking into that?
I think the mining business, for the most part, is so mature now. There's not great opportunities to
Okay.
invest in it, and the exception to that is rare earths.
Mm,
Oh.
I think the rare earth production that we had in the U.S. that literally got shut down. That was a super bad idea. I think one of the reasons that Trump wants to get control of Greenland is there is an awful lot of rare earths in Greenland. Most of the rare earths being mined now are in China. And
Mm,
my preference was always, as the mining business got more and more mature and there was less opportunity in it. Uh, the one stock that I owned for a long time, it's still a great company to invest in, is a company called Mine Safety Appliances.
Mm.
And what they do is they make all the safety equipment to keep mines and miners safe. I would say mining is going to be a, 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 hundreds of billions of dollars worth of business, but it's such a mature business. I would say you're better to try and invest in that from the people who serve the mining industry as opposed to mining itself.
so yeah, peripherally, like the services that go with the mining, opposed to
Correct.
okay, yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
that kind of makes sense too, because there's only so much space that you could have mines, and there's already a lot of people or enough people in it doing it right now, and those investments have already been made,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
So,
And the
but
potential for return in a lot of them is not really
mm,
that great. But I would tell people, you know, the average person who has a portfolio, even if it's just in a mutual fund, really doesn't understand what it is that they're investing in. But the truth is that same person who might have a $500,000 in their IRA doesn't have enough food to last a week.
yeah, well, that's huge, because like even if you have a big old pile of gold somewhere, a bunch of small piles of gold, if you don't have food, you don't have water,
Yeah.
your base necessities, well, good luck spending it, you
Yeah,
know.
I would say the thing that people don't realize is water is the most important
Mm.
commodity on earth, because if you don't have water that you could drink in 100 hours, you're dying of
Gone.
dehydration. It takes 2 or 3 weeks to starve to death. It would probably be a month until you needed to have a gun to defend whatever water or food it is that you have. But the average person who's prepping is doing security first and water last. And to me, water is the most important
First.
part. If
Mm.
if I when I had my farm, I had three wells that were drilled. One of them had a solar pump. One of them had a hand pump. And I used to say to people, I have enough water for the 10,000 people who live near me for 100 years.
Mm,
So there wasn't anybody going to harm me if I had water and could, give their children a drink. Water is just so important, and we're also vulnerable because 99% of Americans, if there's no electricity to pump the water out of the well or through a public system, the taps go dry and the clock starts ticking. You're 100 hours away from dying.
yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, well, and also, yeah, look what just happened to California, and that was not having enough water, not having the resources or the proper things in place to get the water there. It was like, and that happened in a few days, a
Yep.
week,
Yeah.
Yep.
total destruction. So it's like there's
They
this.
say in a collapse that the easiest thing to do without is electricity,
Mm,
and I very much believe that to be true. But you're not going to last very long without water,
yeah,
and eventually you're going to have to eat something. And the idea that somewhere in the 90 percentile of Americans do not have a week's worth of food in their
Mm.
house is absolutely insane. In my house, I have enough food for my whole neighborhood for many, many months, and have got lots of former military guys in my neighborhood. I want to keep them all fed well so they can protect me.
yeah, well, yeah. So,
Because even though Donald Trump is the president of the United States, the idea that we're out of the woods and risk
yeah,
for an
right.
economic catastrophe, I have to tell you, on budget, there are 34 trillion reasons why that's untrue. And if you look at the off budget stuff, 150, $200 trillion worth of off budget obligations, you know, the stuff that Elon Musk is finding, a million here, a million there, that's not really going to add up to the kind of things that they need to do.
Mhm.
They need to cut money by the hundreds of billions
Yep.
just to cut down the amount of money that the Federal Reserve is going to have to print in the next 4 years just to keep the system steady.
Really.
Yeah.
And if I want to go back to something I said before about the patience in owning gold and owning
Mm.
silver over a long period of time, the reason such great patience is required is because both gold and silver are highly manipulated markets, because there's a lot of big banks involved that will short precious metals to push it down to shake people who own it out of it, and they're the ones that are the buyers at the bottom. And I always tell people the best strategy it is that you can have with precious metals is buy for the long term, buy for the rest of your life, have no plan to sell any of it unless your back is against the wall and you have to. But the time you really want to be an aggressive buyer is when it's falling,
Mm.
because it's going to go back up. If it's falling, that's always a temporary phenomenon. I saw silver get almost to $50 about 10 years ago, and it fell back to 10. Well, I wasn't buying at $50, but at $10, I was backing up a truck every time I had money to get more.
Right.
But your plan is always precious metals are the best way to transfer wealth to the next generation because, again, no one knows you have it.
Mm.
Hmm. Well, that's
So,
the key.
so what do you think about gold and silver's effectiveness in a shit hits the fan kind of situation? Is it still going to, I don't want to say be as valuable because, like, how do you mark that when the dollar's completely collapsed? But, like, do you think it's still a useful investment during that, like, during that complete kind of collapse? You know, the power grid's out, you know, all that. Are people still going to be trading, you know, wanting your gold or wanting your silver for their food or water?
Well, nobody who has gold and silver ever starves to death. That's the first thing I would tell you, because in a collapse where nobody has faith in the money anymore, that's the only way transactions can occur, where it's a barter of a similar value, or it's something somebody's selling you based on currency. And if you look around the world to all the places to where currency has collapsed in the past, and I think the best kind of textbook example is Zimbabwe. When they had the collapse of the Zimbabwean dollar, within a matter of weeks, people were out in the hills panning for gold, trying to find a gram of gold that they could trade for food.
Mm.
Same with Argentina, same with Libya. Precious metals are a global currency that's been used as a global currency for 6,000 years. And in the long term, it's never really gone down in value. It goes down in the short term because of
Mhm.
manipulation. But literally, you could pick any time in my lifetime. I'm 65 years old, and say if I bought gold or silver here or there, if you look at where we're at now, it's pretty hard for you to be unhappy.
Okay.
And the truth is because if you're holding it for a long period of time, uh, the ounce of gold that I bought when I was a teenager for about $45, I still have.
Mm.
It's worth $2,800 now, and the federal income taxes I paid on that gain are zero, zero.
Mm.
Because in theory you don't pay anything until you sell it. If you were in the stock market, you're getting dividends and capital gains distributions. You're paying taxes every single year
Right.
on part of that gain. And this is again something that's a gigantic tax advantage to own a gold. But the big thing I always tell people, and this is especially true of business people, there are some risks in your life if you have a business that you can't possibly insure because there's no insurance available for it. And if there was, the insurance would be paying out in dollars. And the smartest way that you can insure those risks is to just set money aside in gold to say, if it hits the fan and I still have to pay employees or I still have to buy inventory, I'm going to have money to do that.
Mm.
And
Mm.
there's no other way to guarantee your future purchasing power other than to own gold.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were mentioning, you know, like, you know, buying the dip essentially and doing that. Like, how do you predict the dips and spikes? Is there a way that you can do that relatively reliably, and what affects the prices? So are you just being extra patient, or are there things you can watch out for to be like, well, I got to get it now because I see it's going to be going somewhere soon? Or
I think when you start to see, if you follow the precious metals market and you start to hear that the big banks like JP Morgan are shorting precious metals, they're
Mm.
doing it because they're trying to push prices down in order to blow people out. obviously, anytime you have a big run up in gold, you're going to be subject to a little bit of a pullback. Right now, we're at $2,900.
Hmm.
Uh, I wouldn't be surprised if we were at $3,000 by April 15th, but I wouldn't be surprised if we were at 2,500. And I'd be a
Okay.
lot more interested in buying more at
Yeah, yeah,
2,500
yeah.
than I would at 3,000. So it's one of those. It's very difficult to predict, when dips in gold are coming, but when they come, they're obvious, and that's when you want to back up the truck and buy some more. Now,
So essentially,
obviously, there are people who are on TV all the time running commercials trying to get you to buy gold. But my
hmm
one caution to people is they're not trying to get you to buy bullion. They're trying to get you to buy numismatic coins. And the difference is gold rounds and bars sell basically at the spot value because they don't have any antique value. But
okay,
there's a lot of people out there that will sell you a 100-year-old, U.S. gold coin, and depending on the condition of the coin, it can sell for 4 or 5 times the price of the spot price of the coin, because what you're really doing is you're investing in an antique.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And there's an antique rarity value because that coin is not really around anymore. But I always tell people, in a real collapse, if you come to me with a really valuable numismatic coin and you want to buy a loaf of bread from me, I'm going to give you the loaf of bread at the spot price for the gold.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
in a collapse, that numismatic premium can
Yeah,
evaporate.
just
And
disappear. Yeah.
I always tell people, if you buy jewelry that's gold, if you buy bars that are gold, if you buy rounds that are gold, there's no such thing as bad gold for those. But if you have too much money in numismatic coins, uh, on the rare occasions that I've come across a numismatic coin, or I had some silver dollars that were really valuable, I would sell them and then buy more spot.
Ah,
So if
Yeah.
I can get
yeah.
2 ounces for selling 1 ounce, I'll take that deal
hmm
all day long and kind of keep it more of a pure play.
Mm.
Yeah.
So you're really using this as a potential survival tool, not merely hedging against your other investments. There
Well,
goes the camera again.
yes, but I always tell people, everybody knows we have a corrupt government. Everybody knows we have a corrupt banking system. If you're participating in that every single day and putting your money into a system that you know is corrupt, uh, you know, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. There are people who do not realize, they can have 50, $100,000 in the bank because they don't hold that money in their hand. They're vulnerable to the counterparty risk of what can happen to that. Not just the failure of the bank or being declared a terrorist, but anybody who could sue them and make a claim on that money. Very frankly, the
Wow,
interest it
wow.
is that a bank would pay you on a $50,000 deposit versus having a safe with $50,000 of cash in it. If the bank is going to pay you $1,000 a year to subject to you to all that counterparty risk, I got news for you. I'm not really interested in the $1,000. I'm interested in having the 50,000 that nobody knows where I have it. Nobody knows, that I have it in the first place.
Yeah.
Love it.
You
Okay.
give me a 20%
That's
on a
really well.
CD, I'll probably take the risk to give you a little money. But at the
Yeah.
interest
Yeah.
rates we have now, I have a very hard time understanding that people know that we have a corrupt system, yet they participate in it every single day. And every time you use a swipe card or a credit card, you're putting your data out there in a way that your identity can be stolen and your bank accounts can be emptied out. That can't happen when your money's in metals.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. They can't take it from you. They don't know
Yeah.
that it's there. Yeah. Okay. Shoo. Okay. That's really insightful. Yeah. I'd never thought about that aspect of it. And so these are great tips for people just coming into this world and they're looking for a way to protect their future in these uncertain times. You're really hitting the nail on the head of helping us understand why gold is so helpful in that respect.
So I just have two
Yeah,
more
go ahead
questions.
and
That is
rock your
just one
questions
question,
out,
then I'm
man.
done. And sorry
Yeah.
everybody for the camera going out, but I think it's having an overheating issue. So, but So best places to buy and sell gold, and the best places to store your gold.
I always say store your gold in its personal possession. When I had a big 27-acre farm and people would ask me where I stored the gold, I'd hand them a shovel. I'd say, go try and find it. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, there's what's called midnight gardening where you bury it in the ground. But there's lots of creative ways it is that you could use decoy safes and other things to have gold in your house. I had a good laugh recently when that senator went to jail and he had gold bars in his suit pockets in his closet. That sounded like a pretty good idea.
Okay.
Uh,
What was his name? Yeah, because I forgot about him, and then we found out he was charged and sentenced, and it was like, wow, they actually did something. But
everybody made it sound like owning gold and possessing it was a criminal act or it was a proof of a crime. But my favorite story of all time is I had a friend of mine in New Jersey whose mother was his sweet old mother was dying, and she didn't think her daughter-in-law made very good spaghetti sauce. So before she died, she made her son hundreds of jars worth of spaghetti sauce, and he put a gold coin in every jar before
Brilliant.
before they sealed it, with the idea that if he ever needed to sell some of the gold, he'd have some pasta before it. So it's because gold is small; it's very easy to to hide it, to use
Mm.
decoy safes, or get a big dog, have a big gun safe, and if you have gold in a safe at home or in a secure place at your residence or even buried in the backyard, your odds of ever losing a gram of it are an awful lot lower than if you have money in a bank or
Mm.
money in an IRA or money
mm,
in something where, I mean, people forget there are big countries that have had bail-ins where that you just wake up one morning and they've taken the money out of your account as a tax. I mean, that happened in Italy, where literally they just seize their money. And in a world where governments are broke and looking for every dollar they can get their hands on, to me it just seems like a careless risk to put money at a place where Uncle can just grab it.
mm,
Mm.
yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
thanks for
obviously you have to have some money in banks to be able to do some electronic transactions. But I always say I'm one of those people. I'll go to the bank on a Friday afternoon and deposit $1,000 and make electronic payments first thing Monday morning, so that money is not there for more than 1 minute on Monday morning before it goes out to pay the electric company or Comcast or whatever. So I would say the less money you have in an institution, and by the way, every time you put $1,000 in a bank, that bank is giving that money to the Federal Reserve. They're getting $10,000 back on it to fractional reserve lending.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you are a participant in the fraud of fractional reserve lending if you're keeping a lot of money on deposit in a bank.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, best places to sell and buy, and like, what's that experience like? Because, you got to get your gold from somewhere. And do you want to like use a company, or if like a jeweler guy, or, like, how does that work?
I would say look at all possibilities. I have bought silver coins at yard sales before. I bought them at flea markets before, where you have US 90% silver coins that are literally impossible to fake. Ones that are older, and I would say if you could fake a silver coin, you'd be faking gold coins instead. I'm a big believer. There's a lot of great people both buying and selling gold on eBay. Uh,
Mm.
there's tons of bullion dealers that are out there, and I'll give you a name of one that I've recommended and done tens of millions of dollars worth of business with my clients and myself, and that's Apmex, apmex.com. They've been around since the 1970s, and they have 5 online complaints from the 1970s forward. They're just a terrific company to deal with to buy gold items. And I would make a very specific suggestion for people who want to start with silver. The best silver I think that you can buy, and you can get these on eBay, you can get these through dealers, is in World War II, we were so desperate for copper they stopped using copper to make nickels 100%, and they put silver in nickels. So there's 3 years of silver nickels. They're called war nickels that you could get, and you can generally on a lot of sites buy those at below the spot price.
Wow.
Really?
Hey.
Yeah.
Is there
Okay.
is there a reason for that?
It's just that they're not very popular among most investors, but this is a way to get a lot of bang for your buck with silver. And the unique thing about these is when in World War II, if you had 2 silver nickels, you could buy a loaf of bread for a dime. And there's literally been almost no time since then where 2 silver nickels wouldn't buy a loaf of bread. 2 silver nickels now, or it would be almost $4. You can find a loaf of bread on Amazon for $4.
Mm.
So I would say they're very good as a barter item, because the
Mm.
truth is if there's a collapse, and you have big denominations, if you have 100-ounce bars of silver, or you have ounces of gold, they're almost going to be too big to buy things. You need to have what I call barter currency, which
Yep.
is World War II nickels, old silver dimes, old silver quarters, old silver half dollars.
Okay.
I'm not a fan of going beyond the half dollar into the dollar, because right now a silver dollar is 35, $40. So I would
Hmm.
say you want to think about uh, what can you buy now that would cost you $20? What's the equivalent that you could do that? If you have a 10-ounce bar of silver or an ounce of gold, you're not buying anything for $20 with that, because people can't give you change.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And there's something I heard. I don't know if you could do it anymore, but basically going to a bank and asking them for, like half dollars, like a roll of half dollars at
Right.
price. And then you're kind of, you're not really gambling
You're
because,
you're mining through trying to find if there's any
yeah.
old silver ones in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is it worth doing
there's
that?
people. Uh, Probably not anymore. Maybe 10 years ago, that was
Hmm.
probably a fun hobby to have. But I'm kind of one of those, just work hard, save your money, and buy when the opportunity arises. Always have cash on hand, so that when you have a price decline, or I used to walk through flea markets down in Winchester, Virginia, with 500 or 600 bucks in cash in my pocket, because I could always find somebody who had silver that they needed to get rid of.
Really?
But I would say
Okay.
I'd much prefer to do the buying and selling with individuals. I bought a lot of silver in eastern West Virginia just by putting an ad on Craigslist and saying, I'm a trust fund buyer. I'll pay you spot. What if you have anything, get a hold of me. And I bought thousands of dollars that way without ever using a dealer. But you always want to have a relationship with local coin stores. Let them know what it is you're looking for. Sometimes they'll have something they want to just get out of their inventory, and they'll call you, and you show up with cash and buy it.
Okay.
All right. Well,
Okay. So
well.
start making those connections. And that I'm glad you
And
brought that up
again,
because
I would tell you, owning them over the long term, this is the best retirement plan that you can possibly have.
Mhm.
Because when you think about people who bought gold when it was under $50 an ounce, and now it's 2,800. I got news for you. There's no mutual fund or hedge fund
That's
or
growing
money
like that.
manager or S&P 500 that has matched that with no taxes.
Really? Really?
It's
Yeah.
it's been
Okay.
a terrific investment. Although in that period of time, you probably had a couple of periods of 6 or 8 or 10 years where it didn't do anything.
And it's also a
Yeah.
hedge against potential societal collapse. So I'm really glad we got into silver there.
And like,
It's it's the only currency that you can have a certainty of will always work.
Mhm.
yeah. And like you said, it's the best way to save for the next generations as well.
Mhm.
Because that hole on the property that you got that gold in is going to be a hole with gold in it for till the end of time.
Yep.
Yes,
You
I would
know.
say that you can transfer wealth between generations using gold bars, and that's not going to show up on an estate tax form anywhere.
Yeah. Right.
And
So
Well,
I'm
people
a
who want to
believer
build,
of buy it and hold it forever. Hold it as long as you can. Only sell it if you have no other choice.
yeah. So anybody who wants to build intergenerational wealth, well, people start getting into silver and gold. you know.
yeah.
It's
It's so
I would say there's a limited amount of gold that's in the world. The supply goes up by 1 or 2% per year. All the easy gold that's ever been mined has already been found. So the gold gets harder to get. It's there's less and less of it that gets produced because there's less and less of it that's economic. But again, a lot of the mining problem is at $2,900 an ounce. You're not making a lot of money buying gold.
Mhm, mhm.
If Trump put us on a gold standard at $30,000 an ounce, everybody would be wanting to be a gold miner.
Mm, mm, yeah. Did you have one last question
Oh,
about? Yeah.
just so kind of like walk us through like an investment timeline, say like a young 18-year-old guy, and he's planning on doing this until the day he dies. Like, how would he go about gaining gold and silver, and how much to buy when?
Yeah. First steps,
Like,
pitfalls to avoid.
The
um,
first thing I would tell anybody before you start into a long-term investment plan, especially one in precious metals, you have to remember that in life in America, you only have one true friend, and that friend's name is cash. Cash. You want to build up a lot of cash, have 6 months to a year of your expenses before you really get involved in a big way to invest in substantial precious metals. You can always buy some dimes and nickels just as a little
Mhm.
barter currency someplace. But having a lot of cash is the thing that will prevent you from having to sell precious metals if
Mm,
something goes wrong in your life. So I always tell people, cash is your one true friend. You know, have 6 months to a year of emergency cash if you lose your job, if your car fails. You know,
okay.
if you get arrested, start with having a lot of cash. I don't want to tell anybody what that right number is.
Right.
You know, people know their lives individually way better than I do. But once you're to the point where you go, I've got enough uh, uh, money in cash to put out any fire that comes up. That's the
Hmm.
point where you want to be a lot more serious about investing in precious metals at scale, where you're buying 10-ounce silver bars, a
mhm,
100-ounce silver bars, and
mhm,
an ounce and 10-ounce gold bars. There, you're not buying gold for end of the world barter. You're buying it to transfer wealth into whatever system comes after this dollar
Mm,
system that we're burning out ends. And I always like to
okay.
give people one last thought to understand why these precious metals are so vital to everyone in the long term. I want you to think about 1913 for a second when the Federal Reserve Act came in, and a $20 gold piece and a $20 bill were the exact same thing.
Oh yes. Yes.
Now, a $20 bill won't buy you a dollar of what it bought in 1913. And that $20 gold piece is worth $2,800. This is a nice way of saying that the dollar's value has fallen by 98% in 112 years.
That's
Now, I
insane.
want you to think
Yep.
about a room that has 100 donuts in it and 10 fat guys who love donuts. And they eat 98%, they eat 98 of those 100 donuts and they're full and they have to stop. Well, I got news for you. In a couple of hours, they're going to be coming back for those last two donuts. So if you think all the damage to the dollar that's done since 1913 has been done, I'm telling you the dollar is going to end up worthless. And if your money is in it, you're going to wish your money had been in anything else of value that you could hold in your hand. And if you drop it onto your foot, it would hurt.
Mm-mm-mm. So let's get into that. So why did this happen? Why are we in this situation now where we're functioning under this thing called the Federal Reserve, this fiat currency system, this company, basically this private entity that is no more federal than Federal Express, was adopted into or was given the power over our currency, the inflation and deflation of it. We were, of course, formerly under the gold standard. Why did this happen?
Well, basically, you know, the oligarchs of their time, the Rockefellers and the big Wall Street families, J.P. Morgan, were worried
Bilderbergers.
that the average Americans were getting to be just too prosperous, and they
Okay.
needed to have a system to be able to loot the public in a way that very few people would understand. There have been
Mm,
a lot of bank panics in the prior 50 to 100 years. And they literally introduced the Federal Reserve as a way to protect people's money that would be in financial institutions. That was the selling narrative of the Federal Reserve And there's a great book that goes into great detail about how the Federal Reserve was started. The book is called The Creature from Jekyll
Ah,
Island.
yes.
But over time, we've really gotten to this circumstance where the 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 ability to print money and circulate it, the ability to print money and lend it. This is such a powerful power to have that I would say if we got rid of the Federal Reserve tomorrow and we started the new bank of DJ and Chris and Woody, and we took the place of the Federal Reserve, we would be the most powerful people in America in under 10 minutes,
Right.
because this power to create money and circulate it is a power that should only be in the hands of the government. And
Hmm.
there are very few people who have understood this in the modern age. Interestingly, from the 1830s, when Andrew Jackson was president and got rid of the second Federal Reserve, National Bank of the United States, all the way through the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln refused to borrow money to fight the Civil War. He printed his own money in the form of greenbacks. Even in the 1890s, the primary issue in presidential elections was gold and silver coinage. A lot of people
Mm.
don't know that the real cause of the American Revolution wasn't the tax on tea. It was the colonies, in order to be able to circulate pound money in the colonies, had to first borrow that money from the Bank of England. So
Mm.
we were paying interest to the Bank of England to circulate pounds in the colony, and that predatory leeching of the people's wealth was literally the cause of the revolution. So this thing of central banking and lending money that you created in a computer, or literally printing it out of thin air. This is something that literally until the age of the internet, very few people understood.
Really? That's right. I
Mm.
remember when the internet first came around and I started reading about G. Edward Griffin and the creature from
Yeah.
Jekyll Island and how there's been multiple attempts, I think three or four of them, to institute a private central banking system in this country. But now, constitutionally, Congress is supposed to issue currency. So, so
Well,
how did that?
originally in the colonies had their own currencies because there was
Mhm.
very little commerce that went between the states.
Uh,
And when the Constitution was written, Article 1, Section 8, enumeration of powers, it's very specific that the only money that can be coined is gold and silver. The
mhm.
founders had a really bad experience with inflation because they printed their own unbacked currency. Benjamin
Yeah.
Franklin was actually the printer, called the Continental. And it was literally worthless because when the war went poorly, they just had to print more and more and more. So the founders all understood that gold and silver coinage as money was an important part of liberty, of the ability. The best system you can have is not gold stored at Fort Knox. It's gold in coins in the hands of people circulating in the economy, because then the possession is all over the place. It's very, very difficult for any one party to
Mhm.
manipulate it.
Mm,
But
and this would give us yeah,
the
the
entire
ability to
banking
liberate
system,
ourselves. Yeah, go
yes,
ahead.
the
Mhm.
entire banking system and the Federal Reserve Act. The Federal Reserve Act is probably the most unconstitutional bill that's ever been passed. But I always have this thing I like to say. I want you to think about the last 10 presidential campaigns and tell me how many times you've ever heard a candidate for president talk about the Federal Reserve. Well, with the exception
Ron
of
Paul.
Ron Paul, the
Yeah.
answer is none,
Yeah, yeah.
because the people who allege to run the government are all terrified of the Federal Reserve, because the people
Oh,
in
you
politics.
broke up for a second there.
That's okay. Uh, you'll never hear people in politics talk about the Federal Reserve because they're all afraid of the Federal Reserve. And the
Mhm.
people who have challenged the Federal Reserve over the history of our country, whether it's Abraham Lincoln, who printed the greenbacks, John Kennedy, who signed an executive order to issue silver dollars from the Treasury, Gerald Ford, who wanted to put us back on the gold standard, and Reagan, who took us on the gold standard. Every single politician who's been president who challenged the banking monopoly of the Federal Reserve at some point in time caught a bullet.
Yeah, McKinley as
in
well,
some
right?
in some yeah, in McKinley as well, in some very suspicious circumstances. The
Hmm.
most powerful president against the banks was Andrew Jackson, and he once got shot and wouldn't leave the stage until he finished his speech and accused
Badass,
the
man.
bankers of shoot him. He's the original Donald Trump badass, except he didn't get shot in the ear; he gets shot in the chest. But you really have to ask yourself who's really in control of the country. George Carlin used to say that the politicians were just the front men for the banks and billionaires who stood behind them. And as long as that's the case, as long as we have a banking cartel that's issuing our money in a way that's completely unconstitutional, and no one is prepared to challenge that, Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard with a stroke of his pen.
Hmm.
Donald Trump or anybody else could put us back on it with a stroke of a pen.
Well, and they already
But
tried to shoot him, so hey,
Nothing to lose at this point, man. Yeah, and he seems to be making moves with that kind of forward movement of one that says, well, you know what? They already tried to kill me once. I
Yeah,
must
man.
have some kind of, you know, angel wings on me. So let's
And
go ahead
well,
and play
he's
with this
already
new
old
lease on
and
life.
has a whole bunch of buildings that are clad in gold. So
yes,
he's already got his investments. He's good.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I will never be president. That's one thing you can take to the bank. But believe me, if I was, I would take the oath. And before I started this speech, I'd sign the executive order to put us back on a gold and silver standard before I'd make my inaugural address. Because to me, every problem that you can look at in the country that has to do with money comes back to this. You can't fix the problems of money without fixing the problems with money.
Hmm.
The money is terribly flawed. This is an easily fixable thing. Will Donald Trump do it before he gets out the door? I'll tell you what, if he really wants to make America great again, he will. I
I pray
actually
he
think
does.
this is a problem he understands.
Yeah.
I think he does too. I think he does too. And he's got Ron Paul in his ear as well. So I'm sure that the recommendations are being made. Um, so okay, so we've covered Federal Reserve, Constitution. Did you ever see the movie Masters of the Universe? It was like a cartoon documentary all about the Federal Reserve. You would love it. I'm going to put the link in the description, guys. So if you see this video after the fact or hear us on the podcast, you can go ahead and look for that link in
I
the
have seen
description.
that very, very, very long ago.
Yeah.
But I would also tell people one of the if you're interested in researching this further, there's a number of great books about the Federal Reserve, but there's also a great movie about the history of the Rothschild family in Europe,
Oh, oh,
uh, who they were very heavily involved with the Rockefellers in forming the Federal Reserve. That movie, which was made in the 1930s, is well worth watching to understand the history of money and how we got to this insane system that we have now.
what movie is that?
I think it's called The History of the Rothschilds.
The History of the Rothschilds. Okay, another movie from that period of time, uh, The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then there was the game Deus Ex, which if you play long enough and you talk to people long enough, it gets into all this too. But it was a PC game from back in the day. And it's awesome.
That's an old role playing.
Oh, dude.
Kind of future sci-fi dystopian future scenario.
That's back when artists used to hide really good information in in their art, and
Yes.
the curious would find it. That's one way to fight back against the man.
The
Produce
Wizard
art.
of Oz is super interesting because in the book, the yellow brick road is not yellow; it's silver.
It's her shoes were silver instead of ruby slippers
Yes.
as well, I
Yeah.
think. Yep.
So that was really there was a big debate in the late
Oh,
1800s about if you had a pure gold standard, that they thought the European bankers would be in charge, and they wanted to have a gold and silver, or what was called bimetallism, go together, because silver was. They always used to say that copper was the money of the peasants, silver was the money of the merchants, and gold was the money of kings.
Well, that actually kind of makes
Okay,
sense because the peasants, they don't have enough, they don't have enough capital, if you will, to be able to afford trading in silver. The merchants are at the perfect level for trading in silver. And well, you have to either have to be a king merchant or you have to be a king yourself to then be dealing with the level of gold, which is the level of people management, large mass amounts of people.
And
Yeah.
I want to make a really important point here about money and who it helps and who it hurts. Inflation always helps the richest person.
Mhm.
And the reason is because they're much more likely to be highly leveraged in things like real estate. So
Mhm.
if you make the prices of real things go up, you're helping the rich person. And I always like to use this example. If you show me somebody that's worth $10 million, I will guarantee I can show you that a half a million to a million of that is invested in energy. Okay. So if inflation goes up and the price of fuel goes up, that person who goes to the gas station, that person worth
Wow.
$10 million, if he has to pay another dollar per gallon for his fuel, he probably is making $200,000 in his portfolio for every dollar the price of gas goes up. So
I
he's
see.
actually benefiting from that. The guy that's worth $10,000 doesn't have any money in energy investments, and if the price of gasoline goes up a dollar, he's all of a sudden not eating steak; he's eating hamburger.
Investment favors the rich.
Inflation is the cruelest tax on the poor because
Mm.
their wages never go up in an amount that exceeds the inflation rate. Inflation is literally a way that you're robbing money from poor people and giving money to rich people.
Yeah.
And as a rich person myself, I wish that was not the system we had. I wish
Mm.
the only way to become wealthier in this country what was to be productive and to make productive investments. Far too many people in this country have become millionaires because of inflation, and that inflation is a ton of weight on the average person who's just trying to get by.
Yes.
And isn't
Yes.
that great incentive for, the oligarchs and the billionaires and the millionaires to then just create, more opportunities to
Sure.
waste money and print more money and give it away to wars and give it away to everybody else and take it away
Absolutely,
and
doesn't it?
print it to
Yeah.
all end? Well, they're going to make their investment back, whether
Mhm.
it's in dollar bills or in energy, or if, they're buying up gold when, their buddies, the banks crash the gold. And, it's like, man, like,
Well, there is a certain mental illness that comes with being extremely wealthy. And I just give you an example of somebody who has $100 million. They could quit their job and shop full time. They'd never be able to spend $100 million. It's just too much money.
Mm.
So what they're really doing is they're building up money for their heirs. And the quickest way to make your children and grandchildren drug addicts is to leave them a lot of money so that
mm,
they
100.
don't have to work and they can indulge any bad thing it is that they want to. I'm a big fan of Dana White, the UFC guy,
mhm.
who
Mhm.
said, if you have $1 billion and you're not spending it like a drunken sailor having a good time, you're missing the reason to be rich in the first place. If
Really?
you if you literally are accumulating so much money that your great grandchildren are going to be on a beach drinking mai tai, you don't understand. You're really wrecking the progeny of your life and your future generations of your life. You
Mhm.
should be your goal should be to leave your children enough money to do something, but not enough to do nothing,
Mm.
because having wealthy parents who will bail you out has a poster child, and that poster child's Hunter Biden.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really.
no,
Yeah.
for real. And like
In the
we've seen it in
worst way.
high def pictures
Yeah.
and videos and all that stuff because he filmed himself doing it. And frankly, I shouldn't know what the president's son penis looks like. You
Yeah.
know, we're at that point where it's like, so you got the Democratic left all complaining about nepotism and this, that, or the other, while they've got the president's dong in their or the president's son's dong in their face, and it's just kind of like, yo, don't you see what's going on here? These people that are telling you, the other guys are the enemy and they hate you and hate the millionaire and the billionaire and the nepotistic are the very millionaire, billionaire, nepotistic types that hate you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
it's terribly frustrating too, because, like, to be honest, not everybody has, the start and the money to be able to consciously invest in other stuff like that. They'll have to work harder. And if we had a system that was only just working hard, that'd be great, but it's not. So it's like you gotta be smart and almost ruthless if you want to dig your way in out of a hole and into this, this realm. Because like if you don't play, you can't keep up, and if you can't keep up, you're left in the dust. And if you're left in the dust, you're going to get crushed under the foot. That's just kind of how it is. And it doesn't necessarily need to be that way entirely, but it is. Like financial illiteracy is a big thing in the world.
Yeah.
We can just yell at about the rich millionaires and the billionaires and all this stuff, but not know how money works and not know what inflation's doing to you and not know, what.
Well, that's where the Federal Reserve shines, is that it makes things so needlessly complicated that we don't have the self-discipline or even the interest in looking into it. It just seems like a friggin' jungle. Who wants to go into that mess? But once you start to realize, oh my God, like the way that our currency has been controlled by private banking cartels is something that's been going on for eons. These banks have been loaning whole kingdoms and governments money for centuries. And
it is not an unfair thing to say that the financial system is a device of slavery, and the only difference between the kind of slavery that we had in the U.S. that we fought a civil war over is you can't see the chains with financial slavery.
Yeah,
that's right.
But they're there.
Oh yeah,
they're there. And if you think you're financially secure because you have a couple of $1 million in the stock market and in accounts that the government can see and your creditors can get after, I got news for you. You're not. You're not, because if you don't hold it, you don't really own it.
Yeah,
really. And that's the great trap, and that's the great trick that they pulled on us. And they stopped they basically cut off our capacity for self-realization as effectively as they possibly could. They want to stop that upward mobility. They don't want, like you said, people to be able to get too rich in this country, the common man, to have enough power to challenge the oligarchical elite that has, infested and infiltrated our system to take it over from the inside out. And now they play this ingenious game of divide and conquer, pitting people against each other.
Oh yeah.
And here we are in the midst of it being played here, guys, and let's wake up to this reality together. You've given us so much to think about tonight, Woody. I still have some more questions for you, so we're probably going to have to bring you back on in the future here, but our camera is having issues tonight, overheating, we think.
I'm happy to come back anytime you guys want me.
Yeah. I actually want to do this again, and maybe we can get more into the nitty gritty of the fractional reserve systems and all that, and how to fight the man, so quote unquote.
I have one last thought I want to leave you and your listeners with.
Please.
One of the best parts I think about investing in hard assets is that you're basically saying, I recognize that this is a corrupt system, and I will not participate in it. Because to me, when people say, oh, the system is so big and it's so corrupt and it's so difficult to fight against, I disagree entirely. Because the five most powerful words in the English language are, I will not comply ever. Ever. I'm never going to have $100,000 in a bank account or a stock market, not because I can't. I certainly could. It's because I am not going to comply with the illegality that those systems involve ever.
I will not comply is the mindset that enabled a ragtag group of people to form the most powerful system of self-governance this world has ever seen.
Do you know, a lot of people don't know this, but at the time of the revolution, there was about 700,000 people who lived in the colonies.
That was
and 65% of them supported the king.
Oh, that's
right. But as I like to say, the only votes that counted were the 14,000 at Valley Forge. They cast the only ballots that counted when they crossed the river on Christmas night and saved the revolution.
There's a great movie about that.
They refused to comply. That Crossing, that is a great movie.
Crossing, that was a great movie. And you know what else is great is the John Adams miniseries. Have you seen that? That HBO produced?
I have seen that.
Isn't that great?
Really,
I think
really
they did a good job on that. Yeah, they did a really good job on that.
All right.
Hey guys, it was great to be with you.
It was great to be with you too. We have just a couple questions from one of our viewers here.
Okay.
He did ask
opinion on the stoppage of the minting of the penny.
Yeah,
one of them.
And what's left in Fort Knox now? What do you think is left in Fort Knox, Woody?
I believe there are gold bars that are in Fort Knox, but I think they belong to the Federal Reserve. I
Mm.
think getting rid of the penny is long overdue. I
Okay.
happen to have Homer bucketfuls of old pennies that will become more valuable if they're not making any new pennies of any kind. But I think that's a great idea. But where the gold that was in Fort Knox, if it's all still there, or if it's at West Point in the facility that's in there, no one really knows. But I would say it's interesting. In Trump's first term, Steve Mnuchin was the Secretary of the Treasury, and on the 21st of January, he went to Fort Knox to check on the gold. So
Ah.
who knows? Maybe that'll be one of the places we'll have an audit of. We'll see.
Oh boy, won't that be exciting? I'm really interested to hear what comes out with the Epstein list, and of course with JFK, his brother RFK, Martin Luther King, and 9/11 as well, apparently.
Yeah.
And I heard a lot of gold got moved from those towers.
Yes.
Um, yeah.
There's
Yeah, while we were all
there's a
looking up
lot
at
of
the
mystery
top,
there.
there's a lot of gold moving out of the basements of those buildings.
Yeah, I'd love to see Elon Musk in Fort Knox though, holding some bars. That'd be a fun picture.
Boy, ha. Well, that's going to send a strong message to the oligarchy at that point, and
Yeah, it's funny. Like the richest guy in the world, that's you would think would be like rubbing shoulders and down with the oligarchy is just kind of too weird to never be accepted into the club and too new. And he seems like the kind of dude who's okay with breaking it apart to see what's
Mhm.
at the root of it and then
Well, he's
building it
out there
back up.
trying to build us out into space. Meanwhile, the other really rich guys out there buying up all the land he possibly can.
Yeah, or trying
Yeah.
to create like super viruses and vaccines and other crap to sterilize us. Bill Gates.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think Elon Musk is an easy understand for me because he's a brilliant engineer.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
if you spend any time about brilliant engineers, they are all about one word, which is optimization. They are
Yep.
always trying to figure out ways to make things work optimally
Make
and
it
work
better.
better. And one of the best things that he ever did, and it looked like a financial disaster at the beginning, is when he bought Twitter. But when he explained the reasons he did it, he said, well, because he thinks that free speech is really important for the whole world.
Hmm.
And the idea that for $45 billion it could go down the drain, he just wasn't
Yeah.
going to let that happen. I mean, he's going to make money on it now. It's worth several
He
times
is
what he
making
paid
money on
for
it
it.
now. Yep. Yep.
But
Yep.
the
Yep.
idea that here's this great platform that needs to be cleaned up and needs to work as a free speech platform, that's pure engineer optimization. And if you look at most of what it is he's done, there's always an engineer optimization explanation of it.
Hmm.
Even what he's doing now with Doge, he's
Yeah.
looking around and saying, look at all these ridiculous inefficiencies of, things we're just
Oh
blowing
my
money
God.
on.
Yeah,
And
Medicaid
there's some,
payments going to people that don't even exist, Social Security
Well,
going to 150-year-old people that obviously not alive anymore.
and okay, maybe it may be a million here or 20 million there, and it doesn't seem like much, but like the pennies add up. And there's no reason why we're spending trillions of dollars a year. Like there's no
I think
reason
that,
for that.
well, he was just speaking the other day about
It's like,
$500 billion um, that they foresee they're going to find in the short term. So
well,
I think it's coming.
eventually they're going to have to go after some sacred cows. They're going to have to go after some things
yeah.
that have really big money. And I'll volunteer one that I really wish they would go after, and it's one that would personally cost me money. I just recently had shoulder surgery, and it was $13,000 to fix one of my old hockey injuries.
Hmm.
And the US government paid for every penny of that because I'm over 65 years
Mm.
old. There's no
Hmm.
way that people who have done as well in life as I have and are over 65 should be getting free medical care. I wish they take it away from me. I wish they take it away from everyone because the $13,000 that I didn't have to pay went out of the pockets of somebody who's working at McDonald's, where they had to pay the taxes for that $13,000, and they might as well have paid it directly to my heirs, because the fact that
Hmm.
I didn't have to pay the $13,000 means my heirs are going to get another $13,000
Mm.
someday.
That's
That's lunacy to take people who have millions of dollars socked away and say we are going to give you free stuff paid for by people who can't afford their grocery bill. That
Yeah,
That
that
doesn't make sense. Yeah.
it's an
Yeah.
abuse of the system.
that would save hundreds of billions of dollars.
Yeah,
And even the check I get from Social Security every month, I mean, it's only $900, but it should be zero.
Hmm.
Okay,
yeah,
I'm
That's
not
really
going to give them
humble of
that money
you.
back, but I wish they'd cut
Yeah.
everybody similarly situated off,
Yeah.
because the truth is I'm not going to spend that money. That money's going to just end up with my heirs someday, out of the pockets of people who are just getting by. That's
Hmm.
St. Thomas Aquinas morally wrong.
Really,
yeah.
really is. Thank you for saying that, man. You're a real one, brother, because it's a very humble thing to point out. It's also just very pragmatic and realistic. You recognize that you're part of a union of people here in this system of self-governance, and you want the best for all of us. And I think that that is the way to see ourselves. We
Yes.
we recognize we are intrinsically interconnected with everything and everyone around us, and we don't need to play into the divide and conquer methodology of the oligarchs that are so hopelessly greedy and selfish that they themselves are disconnected and always trying to get more and more and more to fill that empty void in their souls.
It's a hoarding instinct.
It's a hoarding instinct,
It's
man.
it's money
You
hoarders.
know, there's a way to at least feel sorry for these people. It's
Yeah.
it's hard to have love as Christ wants us to have for everybody out there. And I tried to figure out, how do I have love for Dick Cheney and George Bush once upon a time, George Bush Jr. that is, during the Iraq War, and I realized, well, these guys, they never feel like they have enough. They feel this deep insecurity. They must. They need more and more and more all the time to feel good. So I can feel sorry for that, at least. I don't look up to these guys. I don't think highly of them. But I don't want to hate, and I don't want to be a part of that patriotism game that is being encouraged in the world
Well,
today. So,
I just know if you pay me, you had to rob somebody in order to do it.
right.
And I may be the only person in America who gets their Social Security check and buys 20-ounce or 20-gram bars with it,
Wow.
and stows it away.
Yeah.
And when I die, I want that money, those bars, sent to Fort Knox, because I'd like to leave this rock without ever having taken any money from Uncle Sam. But now they'll pay for medical care for people situated like, man, you just go, how does that make any sense at all?
Yeah.
It doesn't. It
No.
doesn't. So yeah, one of many things that we got to fix, but it looks like we might well have the right administration in. I heard that Tulsi Gabbard got confirmed today for Director of
Yes.
Intelligence. It's awesome. And
And
RFK should
the
move through tomorrow.
RFK is coming up. He's voted
Yep.
out of committee with 53 votes. I'm pretty sure he will make it over the line. And truthfully, in the new administration, I'm the most optimistic about two people. I'm the most optimistic about RFK and his ability to get the food chain to
Mm,
change, to make Americans healthier again, and Tom Homan, because every
mhm.
single bad guy that goes to Gitmo or back to where they come from is people that aren't going to be murdered and aren't going to be raped in the future.
Yeah.
To me, these are the all stars of the Trump administration.
Yeah.
He's an imposing figure with a big heart that really cares about saving children and saving the innocent. So man, he's going to scare the cartels, and he's going to be a hero for a lot of people. And getting that food right, man, that's going to help us have healthy brains, and that's of course
Well,
absolutely essential to us being able to overcome the situation we find ourselves in.
he's doing Homan's doing an awful lot in changing the nature of the conversation by pointing out to people there's no such thing as an undocumented worker. If
Mhm.
you're here illegally, you're here illegally. If you believe in undocumented workers, then you think that heroin dealers are undocumented pharmacists.
Yeah, right.
Wow. And there's no other country on the planet that is trying to have open borders either. It's insanity what this experiment
Well, except
that
for like Great Britain and a lot of places in Europe that are forced into it by,
Sure.
the WEF and
right, yeah.
and
Well,
the
yeah.
UN and
Yeah. We'll have to get into that one next time.
Yeah.
WEF and Klaus Schwab and their
So
great reset agenda.
we should wrap it up though, because the camera is barely limping by and it's going to cut us off.
Yep. Well,
Anytime you want me back, guys, I'm always available to you.
awesome. Well, it's great talking to you, Woody. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you shared today. And everybody, make sure that you check out the link in the description. You can find some old videos of Woody's and him sharing financial advice on his channel. I did look up your YouTube channel there. So that's there. And yeah, make sure you like and subscribe if you like what's happening here on Actuali Podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Love you guys.